parliamentary reception was held last week in London for the Energy Storage Network, hosted by MP Alan Whitehead, Chair of PRASEG, the all-party Parliamentary Renewable and Sustainable Energy Group. The industry body took the opportunity to make a high-level call for more attention to be paid to the fledgling energy storage sector, from investment to standardisation to a simpler call for more recognition of the possibilities presented and the challenges we face.
I think it's almost that the Electricity Storage Association has almost issued a manifesto, I think, in terms of what steps need to be taken next on electricity storage, what the ask of government might be on that, and what the horizon might then look like. And the document they produced, I think, is a pretty comprehensive but pretty succinct view of what that horizon will look like. And I think it's very welcome.
Sure. And the network brings together a lot of disparate types of companies and a lot of different levels of energy storage. How does an event like this kind of start to bring that together and sort of bring a sense of coherence into the way that we look at this question of energy storage?
I think there are two odd things about electricity storage in particular. On the one hand, it is an area which is not covered at all by the various government initiatives and devices and underwritings and various other things. It's a subject in its own right. It's not demand-side reduction, it's not demand-side management, it's clearly not introducing new capacity onto the system. It's actually making very efficient use of what there is and making sure that the system is much better at delivering what it needs to deliver as a result. So it's a subject in its own right, but also the whole series of disparate techniques and ways of storing electricity, pumped hydro, compressed air, batteries, aggregation, a whole different number of technologies at different stages of deployment, at different stages of development, and just bringing all those together, I think, under one roof to talk to each other, to get a number of the issues much better cited, is a little achievement in its own right.
Okay. And so you say that today's event is close to a kind of manifesto for the, I don't know whether we call it an industry yet, or a market, or a service, but either way, electricity storage. I mean, do you think it will be looked at in the way that renewable energy has kind of had its ups and downs in terms of political support? What kind of political support would you expect to see for electricity storage, and what kind of support would we aim for and hope for?
Well, I think that the point about electricity storage centrally is that as the nature of energy deployment changes, as the mix of energy changes towards predominance of renewables, with traditional forms of generation playing a backup rather than a central role.
Yeah.
And because that mix is going to be much more variable, but nevertheless generating a very large amount of electricity in particular over the next period, then the role of electricity storage is going to become more and more central to making sure the system is balanced, it's working well, and we get the best out of whatever the mix is. So in a sense, electricity storage may well be seen in the future, should be seen, I think, as the glue that holds the rest of the system together. And that's why I think it's so important over the next period, and that's why it's increasingly important that we don't look at balancing systems in terms of constraint payments and who gets paid what for not producing on what date and who's got a theoretical capacity on the system, but actually people producing to the best way that they can, and having that system held together by the fact that you can store that production between when it's produced and when it's needed, and the system can then be balanced and flattened out, and the demand and the supply can be reconciled in the best possible way. So it just plays a central role in the new world of electricity that we're coming up on, and I think that's the way it needs to be looked at. And yes, electricity storage has been with us for a long time in some ways in terms of the de Norvik schemes and the pumped hydro schemes, but the way that it's going to, I think, integrate itself into a smart grid system and associated batteries, storage and a range of other things associated, for example, with large wind, is going to be quite central to how the system operates over the next few years. And that, I think, is part of the message that's been coming out of the meeting today. It's that important.
Do you think it's going to be a harder sell to kind of convince the man on the street that these kind of things are worth investing in?
Yes, I think because a few years ago it was generally regarded as, well, you can't store electricity, it's not worth talking about it. Now we're saying, well, yes, you can store electricity, but it's sort of a niche market. The centrality of electricity storage, I think we're still some way off getting into general public consciousness. But things change very rapidly, I think, in the energy field, certainly do at the moment. And the fact that this is beginning to be such a key part of the dialogue, I think will actually be the heralding of a pretty rapid turnover in how we see electricity storage as a central part of the system. And the public at that point, I think, will certainly get it.